I don't give a where I play, as long as I go number one in the draft.
From the Erie Otters, Connor McDavid.
From the London Knights, Mitch Marner.
From the Western Hockey League's Brandon Wheat Kings, Nolan Patrick.
This is Tracking the Draft with Craig Button.
He checks an enormous amount of boxes. Nobody in this draft did more with less. I absolutely love him. It's not his skills that anybody's concerned about. It's that playing attitude. And quite frankly, it's really poor.
Speeding towards the future of the NHL.
From the U.S. Development Program, Jacob Truba.
From Färjestad in the Swedish Elite League, Jonas Brodin.
From the Boston U Terriers, Brady Tkachuk.
He could play in the NHL next year. He's one of those guys.
Here's your host, Dean Millard.
Hey there, and welcome to episode 17 on season 2 of Tracking the Draft with Craig Button. The director of scouting for TSN will be along very shortly. My name is Dean Millard, and it is great to have you on board where the stars of tomorrow are discovered and discussed. We're going to break from our usual look at the 2021 NHL Draft as we are doing scouting tips and story time in Craig's council. So Craig is going to join us in just a few seconds. We're going to discuss a whole lot of things. He's got some hilarious stories, and he's got some good tips and some opinions on some players in the NHL Draft and some college free agents. And of course, Craig joins us on the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Hotline. UFFS is the most realistic fantasy platform out there, and you can become a scout. We have a massive scouting program, so you can be watching and evaluating the same players that Craig Button and other NHL scouts do, and then make some money on the side when they're auctioned off or sold directly to UFHL franchises. It is next level. It's on the blockchain. These aren't just players. They're NFTs. We are on the Zilliqa blockchain, the best in the business. So get in the game where you own the game. Become a scout. Apply to become a GM. There is an opening right now on a team that has Connor McDavid, so that's a bit of a draw. And check it all out. You can find more information at uffsports.com, on Twitter at uffsports or at ufhleague, among others. Get in the game where you own the game. All right, without further ado, let's get to scouting tips and story time with Craig Button.
Here he is, the director of scouting for TSN, former GM of the Calgary Flames, and a Stanley Cup champion with the Dallas Stars. Plus, he's a sharp-dressed man with a heart of gold and a passion to match it. Craig Button.
Well, Craig, I always look forward to this episode. We try to do it somewhere in the middle of the season and then at the end of the season, but call it Craig's Council, where we get scouting tips and some story time for you. And, obviously big news in the NHL today with the Tim Peel situation, getting fired for what he said on a hot mic. And a question came in early morning about that, saying, did you ever think a referee was throwing a game as a GM, and what might have happened out of it if it indeed happened?
Every general manager and coach in the history of the league, when their team didn't get a call for them, felt that the referee was against them. So let's get that straight, okay? That's just the nature. The referee sits there. He's supposed to be neutral and everything that does it, and they are, Dean. They are, Dean. Referees aren't throwing the games at all. The referees are doing exactly what the league asked them to do. If you consider about the calls that started to happen a few seasons ago, very few short seasons ago, with the slashes and the hooking on the hands, right? So why was it any different then than it is now? Well, I'll tell you why it became different. Because the GMs decided it needed to be different because Who has the puck more often than not? Oh, it's the skilled players. Well, now who is becoming victim to those slashes and potential broken fingers? We saw a whole bunch of it. So the GM started to go, wait a second, we can't have this. We can't have these types of, so we got to call them now. So they told the officials, we got to call this because they were worried about losing their star players, right? The officials do not go out with their own idea about what is a penalty, what isn't a penalty. Referees, Tim Peel refereed over 1,300 games in National Hockey. He's refereed the Olympics, Stanley Cup playoffs, okay? And, you don't do that for that long if you're not good. And you certainly don't do it that long if you don't have integrity. And at the end of the day, the referees go out, and not only do they have to look at and understand, as the play is unfolding, okay, that's a penalty, interpret it, and everything that goes with it. They also have to, the idea that the referee is not managing the game, and I'm not talking about managing it by the score of the game or controlling the game. It's a fast game, it's a physical game. The referees, so often of the time, are the ones out on the ice. Hey, you know what? Be careful. You know what? An extra step there, and I would have had to call charging. A vast majority of cases, the referees serve as teachers, and in the moment guides. Hey, don't do that. Be careful with that. You're going to have your team. You're going to be in jeopardy there. Don't. Line change. Hey, you know what? I saw what you did there. You were mighty close to getting too many men on the ice penalty. Well, a referee can sit down and be quiet and not say anything, but their job is more than just enforcing the rules and calling what they see as a penalty and interpreting the rule book. It is managing and controlling the game to a great extent, and the players and the emotions and competitive spirit that is involved in it. So Tim Peel on a microphone, is caught speaking something and everything, and now there's all this talk about, oh boy, the officiating system is broken. Oh, everybody has an answer how to fix it. Hey, listen, I can tell you one thing. The NHL is always open to ideas on how to be better. So for everybody out there that has a really good idea and thinks that their idea is brilliant in terms of fixing what they see as a problem, please send your emails and your letters to the NHL offices in New York City or to Toronto and address it to Gary Bettman or Bill Daly or Colin Campbell, George Peros, because trust me, they want to be at their very best. So do that. And is there always room to improve? Yeah, there always is room to improve. But bottom line is, these officials are the best in the world. Do they make mistakes now and again? Yeah, they do, just like players make mistakes. But at the end of the day, their job of interpreting the rules, calling penalties, managing the game, trying to keep emotions in check without inhibiting the players, it's instrumental in the excitement of the game. And, if you want to blame the general managers who are always caught up in this, and let me be very clear, in this stupid argument that we have 6 penalties, they only had 2. Well, you earned 6, they only earned 2. It doesn't have to be 6-6 at the end of the game. And, the next penalty doesn't have to go on the team that has had the benefit of 4. The next penalty goes to the team that has the next infraction. End of story. But let me just tell you this, that starts right at the GM level.
Indeed. All right, this next question comes from the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, and a person wanted to know who some of the top NCAA free agents might be this year.
Wow. Well, there's a number. One, we've already seen a couple of signings. We saw, Josh Dunn from Clarkson. He has signed. The Philadelphia Flyers just signed another free agent. When you look at it, Dean, and you look, so let me preface it this way, okay? I want to preface it this way first. Is that number one is that I believe that NHL teams signing NHL free agents is always a good idea. Always a good idea. When you look at players that are older, that have been able to develop and, move along, you're adding a player that's a little bit older, a little bit more ready to come in and do the things that you're looking for with respect to contributing to your team. And you only have so many draft picks, right? So when you only have so many draft picks, all you're trying to do is add to your prospect pool, trying to help, if they can make it. So I never, ever, ever see a downside with respect to signing college free agents, ever. I never have, I never will. And I think it's important to keep that in mind and understand that, when you are looking at college free agents, that's really important to look at. Now, last year, there was a lot of talk about Jordan Kawaguchi from North Dakota. He didn't sign. There's always going to be players that sign or don't sign. So if you're looking at a few of the players that, certainly are going to be at the top of the list, I don't think you have to. Alex Steves with Notre Dame. And these are undrafted players. Keep in mind, people have watched these players play for a long time. So it's not like, you're looking at players and you haven't seen them. You just seen an advancement. Ty Pelton-Bice with Wisconsin. Another player that certainly, merits a lot of consideration and interest. And to me, if they do want to sign, they will sign. And you start to go down the list. You start to look at goaltenders, like we've talked about Dryden McKay at Minnesota State. I mean, all he does is shut out everybody. I don't know, and I'll be straightforward. I don't know if these players are going to be NHL players or they're not. I just know that there's no downside, zero downside to drafting these types of players. I know there isn't. So when you start to look at the ability to add players and whatnot, I mean, you have to. Some of the defensemen, I mean, there's no question that Matt Kierstead at North Dakota has drummed up tons of interest from NHL teams, and that's understandable. I mean, he's a good player that's put up lots of points, and much like Connor Mackey last year, who signed with the Calgary Flames, he's going to get a lot of interest. So, there's always going to be a number of them that draw a lot of interest. Are all of them going to play? No, very few of them are going to play. But there's no downside to adding these players to your group. That's just a few of the names that I mentioned. I mean, Strauss-Mann, a goaltender at Michigan. I mean, he could be a player. But there's so many of them that draw interest from NHL teams, and rightfully so. And I think that as you move along, you're going to see some of them. Look at Alex Ayathalo. Alex Ayathalo was a player that signed a few years back with the LA Kings. And, no downside. And where's he at now? He's a good player for the LA Kings, right? Like a really, really good player. I think Connor Mackey is going to be a good player for the Calgary Flames. You start to look at, different types of college free agents. Jimmy Vesey, he was a much sought-off college free agent. He's been an okay NHL player. But there was nothing wrong with pursuing him vigorously and going after him and being excited about getting him. And, when you look at the different types, and Jimmy was a Hobey Baker winner, right? He was a Hobey Baker winner. And he's not as good a player as Alex Ayathalo. So it gives you kind of a perspective on, some of the players, all of them warrant consideration. Some of them are going to have better careers in the NHL than others. But I can tell you what, it's not going to be very many that are going to end up in the NHL, just like a junior draft or an NHL draft or even the European free agents are the same, dude. But zero downside to signing them. There's only upside in signing these guys.
Yeah, some of them might end up in your minor league system. Some of them might step in and play. You just never know. And it kind of leads us to our next question about this year's draft. And, some of those free agents might play in the NHL, but this question is asking about this year's draft, the 2021 draft. Are there some players that you think will be able to step in and play right away? And this is another question that came in from the UFHL. So we're giving away some of our strategy here a little bit, Craig, but that's okay. We're going to share to help grow this platform. But what do you think? Are there guys from this year's draft that you think might be able to play next year?
I don't see a one. There's not one player for the 2021 draft that I can say, you know what, I think that guy's ready to play in the NHL or could play in the NHL. You look at Alexis Lafreniere. He had completely exhausted, anything he could accomplish at the junior level. And I say that with the greatest respect. And you know what? He's having his growing pains as a rookie in the NHL. You look at the previous year with Jack Hughes and Capo Caco and Kirby Doc, right? Like, I mean, they played, but you couldn't call them contributors. Kirby came back after the pause and came in. So when I look at this year's draft, and okay, name the names. So Owen Power and Carson Lambos and, you know, Dylan Gunther and Brent Clark, like Matty Beniers. I'm just naming a few of them, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not naming them all. I don't see a one that can come and play in the NHL next year. Does that mean I'm right? No. But it means that my belief in watching these players, knowing what the demands of the NHL are, also knowing that what you're looking at in terms of progression with other players that haven't played for a year that might get an opportunity from the 2020 draft and the 2019 draft, I don't see one player, not one.
Well, and there's a big difference between playing in the NHL and being effective. You said it a lot. It's not a developmental league. So, you know, any one of these guys could play. They're allowed to play. They're allowed to put on their skates and a jersey if the team decides. But is that the right choice for their development? Because, you know, we've seen it a lot of times. Young players, rookies, they drown in that ocean of the NHL with so much more experienced guys.
So well said, Dean. And you know, there's some players that I use examples of, and you know, people say, "Why are you picking?" I said, "I'm not picking on them at all." I mean, what I'm trying to do is illustrate the point that, you know, what you're doing and what you've done is great, and potential is a wonderful thing to hang your hat on. But if you're not ready to play in the National Hockey League, and I'm talking about ready, it will chew you up and spit you out like nothing. Because it's a league, like it's the best league on the planet with the best players. And, you know, it's territorial. When I say, you know, players aren't ready to give up their spots. They're not ready to go, oh, look at this great first round pick. Why don't you have my spot here? You know, you're so wonderful here. Take it from me, right? No, it's a territorial competitive league. So I tell players this all the time. If you're not ready and you're not ready to move on, and you haven't dominated at the levels below you, you know, you best be really careful about doing that. I'll give you an example. I've been asked a lot about Jake Sanderson. A lot about Jake Sanderson, who was the 5th overall pick in the 2020 draft by Ottawa. Oh, do you think he can go play? Well, define playing. You know how I define playing, okay? You can put on an NHL jersey and you can be in the lineup. I define it by, are you contributing? Are you contributing to the team? So that's how I define it, to be clear. So I don't think Jake Sanderson's ready to play in the NHL. But the thing is, as I say, he hasn't dominated college hockey yet. So he's gonna move from college hockey to the NHL. He hasn't dominated college hockey. So why not take the path of Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes? They went back and played their sophomore seasons in college. They came to the NHL ready to contribute, and they're never going to look back. So ask yourself the question: Do you want to dominate and be ready to come into the NHL not looking back? Or do you want to come into the NHL not having dominated, and it's just going to be a whole lot of growing pains, and some of those growing pains are going to result in you perhaps not making it? That's the simple point I'm going to make. And I love Curtis Lazar as a person. There's no better. Curtis Lazar is an example, and Tyson Jost is an example. And the NHL teams put them in those spots. The players, you know, decided to come and go. Tyson Jost, real top-end player. I watched Tyson since he was 15 years old. Goes along a path, you know. After 1 year at North Dakota that he didn't come close to dominated, he's going to go to the NHL. Tyson Jost is in a struggle to find a place in the NHL. His teammate at North Dakota, Brock Besser, went back for his second year. Has he looked back?
Not at all.
No, he hasn't looked back. And trust me, those examples, I have seen too many players leave too soon. I have never seen a player stay too long.
Indeed. Well said. This is a scouting question now. We've talked a lot about how you use video after games to go back and watch, but what about the person that can't get to the game? They're watching it on TV or they're watching it online on the new CHL package. Is there something that they should be looking for? You're at the mercy of the camera angles, but do you just watch the game and just pick out things, or do you watch for specific things when you're only watching on video?
I think you can do both, Dean. And so here's the benefit of watching the game on video or on TV or however you're going to watch it, is that the camera follows the puck, right? So who usually has the puck? It's usually the good players, right? So the camera work's doing a lot of the work for you as a scout, right? Because you just follow along and you see the guy with the puck. And so that's one element of watching the game and seeing who keeps showing up on your screen and keeps showing up in the thick of the game. And the broadcast, can't capture everything, but as you're watching those players, I think number one, understanding what you can and what may be limiting to a certain extent when you're watching video have to be taken into consideration. But then what you're watching, and I think this is really, really important in any scouting, live or on video, is that what translates to the NHL. And, you have to have quick hands. You have to be able to make decisions quickly. And that's with and without the puck. So if you see a player going down on a 2-on-1 and he has the puck and the other player doesn't get open, right? You go, okay, I got to watch that again. Does that player understand how to get open and leave a passing lane so that they can get the shot off? That player might have a great shot, but if he doesn't get open to get the puck for that shot, the shot doesn't matter, because in the NHL, those things get closed off really quickly. So you got to be thinking all the time. You're skating. Do you get closed off in your skating? Are you able to put defenders back on their heels? Do you see a defender kind of back off a little bit because a player's speed or quickness is really threatening? Those are just a few examples that I have. And one thing that I've thought about here, and it's just come right back into my mind here, Dean, is that I think that we should do something where I do an outline about, types of players, what are some of the qualities those types of players need, what type of skills are there, because how you're watching a certain player. So if you're watching a defensive defenseman and I think type of player, you better know what a player type is. You better know, because a player type, they're not all the different. So a defensive defenseman or a let's call on the second pair defense, not somebody that's not going to contribute offense, right? But the puck skills for a defenseman that's going to be that type are very different than a defenseman you're projecting to be on the power play. So the ability to pass the puck and make an outlet pass from your defensive zone to exit the zone is very different than making a pass in the offensive zone under sticks and through skates to create a scoring opportunity. So if you're just looking at skating and go, well, that guy's a great skater and he'll be a great offensive player, they're different skills. And the skating of a defensive type defenseman, a Marc-Edouard Vlasic, as opposed to an Erik Karlsson, are completely different. It doesn't mean that skating isn't important, but Marc-Edouard Vlasic's skating is used to close space and to get up on an opponent and to be able to pivot and be agile in defending the rush and being able to beat pressure in the defensive zone. And Erik Karlsson has to use some of those skills, but Erik Karlsson's ability is to recognize quickly, I can get into the transition. I can shake a guy with my agility in the offensive zone to create an opening on a shooting lane or a passing lane. Very, very different skills of agility. And those are the things that you have to recognize when you're looking at, okay, what type of player is this and what skills are required. And I think that if we put something together, that's something we could absolutely share to just try to get, because I just give a few little examples, but I think to try to be a more complete and thorough is something we should look at doing.
Indeed. We'll put that together for a future episode. I'm excited about it already. I'm excited about the answer to this one too, because I always love this. But somebody wanted to know who's one of the funniest pre-draft interview. You get these kids in that are 17 years old. I'd imagine some of them are really shy, but there's probably some pretty outgoing ones that you had a chance to interview over the years.
Oh, well, there always is. And one of the things that I find, the players are, they're so goal oriented and they're so committed to being the best they can be and everything that goes with it. And, so I always felt you always try to put the players at ease. If you're going to go in and try to grill the players, it's not fair. And if you're going to try to do it in a room where there's 12 of you and one of them, you're just ganging up on them. My feeling has always been, you're trying to understand, you're trying to help the player understand, okay, if we draft you, here's what you can expect. Here's what you're going to do. Here's how here's what you can expect with us. We would ask players, how do you see your game? Here's how we see your game. Those types of things. And if there was a question that had arisen, we'd always want to ask the player, hey, listen, we want to ask you this because this is something we want to hear, your response to it. And it wasn't about trying to trick the players or back up the players or see how firm their handshake is. To me, all that stuff is a bunch of garbage. And we also went and spent time with the families. We went into the homes and we wanted to answer the parents' questions and all the different things that they had with respect to their aspiring hockey player. So those are the things that I always thought were a lot of fun and really enjoyable. And and we used to spend a day or a day and a half with the players and their family. We narrowed it down. We couldn't do it with 60 kids, but we could do it with a defined group at different points in the draft to really get a comfort level. So there's two stories that really, for me, that I always really enjoyed telling, and they're a lot of fun. The first one is with Todd Harvey, and he lived just outside of Toronto or in Cambridge, and James Duthie in his book Beauties has this story in there. So I went there. Todd Harvey, he was one of the players in the 1993 draft. We're going there. So we go in and I go into the home, and they have a little kind of hobby farm. Right, they have a little hobby farm outside of Cambridge, and so we go in and we're meeting, we're having lunch, and you hear this cow in distress. Well, it was a cow about to birth a calf, right? So Todd's mother Denise is outside and goes outside, and she's tending to the calf, and so now it's Todd and Todd's dad Doug, and so we're chatting, and all of a sudden Denise calls us out. So this is May. Keep in mind, I got sandals on, a pair of white shorts, and a golf shirt on. So it's casual, it's comfortable, right? So Denise calls us out. Come on out here, right? Like, Todd, I need your help. The mother's going to birth the calf, right? So we get right out there, and so I'm standing there. I kind of follow Todd out, right? And I'm standing there. So Todd's helping his mother. I'm standing there. So Todd goes, "Get over here." So I get right into the pit. He goes, "You got to grab onto the calf's legs, right?" So boom. We help the mother birth. We get the calf out. I fall straight back into a pile of mud, and it was it's one of those things. It just happened, right? But it was one of those things that to this day, okay, it's still a story that Todd and I laugh about. The family laughs about. James Duthie had a good laugh about it, right? Those experiences of being right into the home and what they do is really a lot of love. So when you think about those types of moments, like they're unique, right? And let me tell you, the white shorts never made it. I don't know what I did with them. They were gone anyway. So the other one is in the 1997 draft, we spent a lot of time with Brendan Morrow, and so we always told the players, we wouldn't be meeting with you and spending this amount of time with you if we didn't think that you were a player that could help us, and we didn't like you. But we cannot make any guarantees to you. We don't know if we're going to draft you. We're not going to tell you we're going to draft you, because there's only one team that can tell you that they for sure can draft you, and that's a team picking first. Mm-hmm. So we lay it out for them, and we tell them, and and then we go through the whole exercise of, if we draft you, here's what you can expect and everything. And one of the things we told the players, junior players, you come into training camp for 7 days. That's 7 days. That's it. You're going to get your ticket. It's going to be a return ticket, and you're going to start your season in back where you're going to spend your season. You're not going to play an exhibition game. You might have teammates that play an exhibition game. We don't care. We don't care what other teams are doing. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to set you up. And he was like, okay, everything's great. So now two things come out of that. So we ended up drafting Brendan, I don't know, 26, 27, somewhere in that area of the draft. I don't have it off the top of my head exactly. So we draft him, and, Brendan comes down to the stage. We're standing on the stage with him, and Brendan's angry. And it's noticeably angry. And it's kind of like, what have I missed here, right? Like, so, you do the old smile into the camera, jersey, And so as we're walking off the stage, right, I go, something wrong? I just stop him. I go, seriously, Brendan, like, what's wrong here? Like, we got a problem? Like, we just drafted you, and you look like you're as disappointed as anybody I've ever seen come up to the stage. He goes, oh, I'm so sorry. That's not the way I wanted to be. He goes, but two teams that were picking ahead of you, and they had 2 picks in that draft. You can go back to look at it. I'll tell you who they are, Chicago and Carolina. Brendan said they both told him that they were going to draft him. They both told him that they were going to draft him. And he said, I'm sitting there, and they didn't draft me. So I said, well, like we told you, we can't control what other teams do. He goes, I know, I'm just, I'm thrilled to be here. And his whole mood changed. So then that we cleared that up pretty quick. And, we love Brendan. So now we come to training camp. So we're going to meet with him after he spent 6 or 7 days. He's going back to Portland. They have a great team. They ended up winning the Memorial Cup that following season. And so we're going to sit with Brendan, talking to him about, what we're going to do some things with goal setting and whatnot. He goes, I got to tell you, he goes, you guys sure are consistent. You told me back in May I was going to get a return ticket. I said, you wait, I'm coming to training camp and I'm going to show you I'm not going back to junior. And we said, yeah, that's the attitude we want. But he goes, you laid it right. I said, that's all we can do. And we're going to do everything we can to help you be the best player you can be. One of the things we always did with the junior players, after we sent them back, we made sure we showed up in the first week or first 10 days of their season to let them know, like, you're back here, but we're here to work with you and everything. So those are 2 of my stories about the one's just a great story that just happened. And the other one with Brendan is about lay out what you're going to. Not everybody wants to hear exactly, but at least they know where they stand. And at least they know what you're going to do and you're consistent. Brendan obviously had a really good career, won a gold medal at the Olympics in 2010, was a captain of the Dallas Stars, had a terrific NHL career. And, obviously he did everything he needed to do to be a good NHL player. And all we needed to do was just help him along and guide him along and be honest with him.
Awesome. Okay, this one wants to know about a story at the draft table from your scouting days, your GM. People always would love, we see in the movies about, with the draft and the conversations, but, what is the draft table really like?
Well, the draft table is always very interesting because there's this buildup. There's this buildup of anticipation. There's this buildup of excitement about players you're looking to draft and players you think you can get and hoping that you get in the draft. And you have to be realistic. If you're picking 20th, you're not going to get a player that's rated in the top 5 or whatnot. But so you go into that and you work and my belief, and we practice this, is that, we're going to the draft prepared. We're going to the draft knowing what we want to do. We'll consider different options about if you're going to trade a pick or whatnot. But all in all, you got to be ready to go. And we were. There was none of this. We never had an argument at the table, ever. Do you know why? Because it wasn't allowed. Our discussions and our debates began in August or September of the previous year. And we had weekly conference calls, and then we had meetings. And then by the time we got to our final list, we didn't have to argue, bang our fists or everything. We'd already had those discussions, and we had the benefit of watching on a regular basis, week in, week out with the calls. What did you see? What do you think? How about this player? What about that player? Where does he fit on the list? And our list was always ongoing. We didn't make a list at midterm and then go and readjust it. Our list was a weekly list that we worked on all the time. So we never went into the draft, you hear about this, arguments, timeouts, whatnot. No, never. So when you ask me about draft table, you know, I think that the one that I always tell, and it's one of my great disappointments, because it was a great mistake by me. It was a great mistake by me. So it was the 1998 NHL Draft, and during that year, there was two players playing in Quebec: Eric Chouinard, who ended up being drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, and Simon Gagner, who ended up being drafted by the Philadelphia Flyers. So if people may not recall, but the Colorado Avalanche had 4 first-round draft picks that year, because Pierre Lacroix, the very crafty and outstanding GM, and may his soul rest in peace, of the Colorado Avalanche, was trying to angle towards Lecavalier, who was the first overall pick that year. And he had 4 first-round picks. So I give you that just as a little bit of background to where I'm going. So about halfway through the year, I mean, when I say we loved Simon Gagner, that would be understating it. Everything about his game we thought was fantastic and outstanding. And so we made a decision that we were never going to go watch him play in Quebec or any place convenient down the stretch. If we're going to go watch him, we'd go watch him in Val d'Or or Rouyn-Noranda or Chicoutimi, like where nobody else would venture for the most part, because we didn't want anybody to know how much we liked him. And so, we were trying to be undercover. We were trying to be covert instead of overt. Anyway, so we go through all the time, same thing. We go and spend lots of time with Simon. This is the guy, and we really legitimately think we're going to get him at our pick. And I forget, again, it was 26, 27, somewhere in there. So now the draft unfolds. So Bob Gainey, our general manager, he knows how much we like Simon Gagner. So now there's a lot of maneuvering going on, because Colorado doesn't have the first pick, and now they're trying to move picks along. So we're seeing picks. So Bob says to us, he goes, "Hey, listen," he goes, "I can trade up and, I don't know, 15 or 16 or something." He goes, "What do you guys think? And we can get the Gagner kid." And come on, like don't even worry. We're gonna get him at 20, whatever we're picking. So it comes back again. Another call comes in, and Bob says, "You know what? We can trade up to get this player. Why do we want to wait? Why do we want to wait to get Simon Gagner? You guys love him, and let's just do it." Bob, we got this guy in the bag. Don't even worry about it. We're not saying it in those ways, but we're just kind of dismissing Bob. He gives us another go at it. There's a third go at it to trade up. And we just dismiss it, because now we're into pick 18, 19, somewhere around there. And so our confidence that we're going to get him where we're picking just continuously has magnified to the point where we're harming ourselves. So the Philadelphia Flyers draft Simon Gagner. Okay, they draft Simon Gagner. Dean, I just go like this. And I just drop my head, and I sit there, and what's in my head? Simon Nollet, who was the head scout, the chief scout, long time with the Philadelphia Flyers, and an excellent scout. Well, guess what? They were doing the same thing we had done. They had laid in the weeds. They had done everything covertly, and Simon Nollet had played with Simon Gagner's father and knew the family exceptionally well, but he wasn't telling anybody, right? So here we are, right? Sitting here with an opportunity to get the guy exactly that we wanted, and there we sit. And you know what? Bob Gainey, he never said, "I told you," or whatever thing. We carried on and carried forth. But it was a great lesson in not being too overconfident, and recognizing that there's other people that are really smart around you and that are trying to do things to maximize their potential at the draft table. It was a great lesson for me to not be, that arrogant in terms of you thinking you're the only one that knows. And, we missed out on a really good player that we could have. It's one thing to miss out on a player when you, the team picks them and you just don't get them. But we missed out on a player that we could have had, that we loved, because of because of my overconfidence and, quite frankly, an arrogance that was really stupid.
Well, that's a brilliant story, and bravo for telling it on the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Hotline. That's where Craig joins us. The scouting is a huge part of the platform and the lifeblood of the franchises in the UFHL. Any free agent goes through a scout to get in the game, where you own the game, and all the prospects go through the scouts and then are auctioned off or sold to franchises. Start putting your scouting talent to good use. Become an independent scout or form a partnership with an existing franchise. Reach out for more information at UFHL or UFH League on Twitter. And that brings us back to a question about the 2021 draft. And this came in from the UFHL as well. And basically they want to know, what has happened to Autu Raty, who was number one at the start of the season. And I don't know, maybe Craig, this is, doesn't happen all the time, but this does happen where guys are ranked highly at one point and then they just drop for whatever reasons. What do you think it is for Raty this year?
So I asked the question this way. So and it doesn't mean that is it. So here's a young player. Okay, he's a late birthday. So by that he's born after September 15th of 2002, or he would have gone to last year's draft. So we're now evaluating him on playing in the SM League, the Pro League in Finland. And quite frankly, as good of a talent as I think that Autu Raty is, he's not ready to excel in that league, right? But here we are evaluating him based on our own projections and what we think is there. Just because he's not performing at that level in the league doesn't mean he's still not a really good player. Mm-hmm. How many, if you think about other players in the draft, how would Owen Power, who's got a late birthday, how would he be doing in the SM League? How would Matthew Beniers be doing in the SM League? He's a late birthday, right? So you start to try to put we know how well William Eklund is doing in the Swedish League, and he's a late birthday. So, everybody's different. And so when I go back to how do you assess players, I look at Autu and I say, okay, so Autu skates really well. He's got speed, quickness, agility. He's got power. He's got leverage. He attacks it in the middle of the ice. I think he can make plays. I think he's a really good player, personally. Okay, is he the best player in this draft? No, I don't think so. I think that at one point I thought that he very well could challenge for one, but no, I don't. But that's also speaks to other players showing you more. You have more of a body of work on these other players, and I think that becomes significant, Dean. And so it's a cautionary tale. Just because he hasn't performed at a top-notch level in the SM Liga, or maybe for whatever reason he didn't play in the World Junior Tournament, whatever those reasons are, doesn't mean he's not a good player. It doesn't mean that Finland made the wrong choice or wrong decisions in not selecting him to their team. And you have to temper that. Continue to go back and watch what the player does, what type of player you see him as. Be straightforward with it. He might not be as good as to be able to challenge for the first overall spot, but it doesn't mean he can't be a really good player in the National Hockey League, which is exactly what I think he can be, because the attributes that he has, the talents and skills that he has, I think they're going to come to the forefront, and I think that they'll be there. I just don't think he's been quite ready to do that from a maturation point of view at this point in time.
Yeah, and you're right. It doesn't mean he's not going to be a great player or a very good player, but guys are better than other players at certain. You see it all the time in minor hockey. The biggest kid is better, and then everybody else sort of catches up a little bit, and it's just credit to everybody else, and guys age and get experienced as they go. So it'll be interesting. It all will come out this summer, and we'll find out. And I want to wrap up with this one, and I want to just say appreciate your time and coming up with some great stories. So this is a fun one. They want to know what your favorite junior and college arena is, past or present. I'm pretty sure I know your college arena, but give us maybe some of your favorite arenas that you like to watch hockey in at the junior and college level.
Well, okay, so what's my favorite college rink?
It's Michigan.
It's Yost Ice Arena. There's no question about it.
Yes.
I lived in Ann Arbor for 12 years. I had season tickets there, and I saw some fantastic games in there. And the spirit of the fan base and the student body, and they have a group in there now called the Children of Yost, who are as good a student body cheering section as any in college sports. So to be able to go into such a venerable building and to watch some of the great hockey players I've watched in that building, it is my favorite. And there's other great arenas in college hockey, but I'm not, but that is my favorite arena, no question about it. Junior hockey, here's the way I feel about junior hockey rinks. Season to season, you're going to have, teams that are better than other teams. And so the environment creates such a buzz, when you got good teams playing, you got good young players playing. So those environments are widespread across Canada and the US and the CHL. So, this isn't a knock against Edmonton Oil Kings or the Calgary Hitmen. Those aren't arenas that really have any appeal for me. I don't care how good the teams are. They just don't have any appeal for me. Mm-hmm. But when you can go in to Halifax and you can go watch a game with top-end talent. I remember going into Baie-Comeau a couple of years back, and, McKinnon and Drouin and Kali, they were all playing. It was unbelievable. And so I was in Baie-Comeau. It was February of their draft year, and it was about minus 35. Clear blue skies, Baie-Comeau's, and I remember getting in there early in the morning because how the flight came in, and the city was a buzz, just absolutely a buzz with this whole idea Halifax is coming in, and you couldn't have squeezed another person into the rink. You go into the rink and everybody, it's like Baie-Comeau. And Baie-Comeau was a good team, and I think they outshot Halifax something like 17 or 18 to 1 in the first period. And Zach Vakali stood on his head. And ultimately, Halifax won the game. But to be in those types of environments and to see those types of games, those types of players, to me, those are the rinks. I remember being in Swift Current a few years ago when Jay Merkley and Nick Merkley were playing against one another. Jay was playing for Swift Current, and Nick was coming in with Kelowna. And mom and dad, who are from Calgary, they're there with the split jersey, Merkley, half Swift Current, half Kelowna. So, parents going to see their kids and that whole atmosphere of junior hockey where it's a big game. And you want to see those players, and players want to, see how they measure up. In college hockey in the United States, it's more about, it's Michigan, Wisconsin, it's BU-BC, right? It becomes more, and the alumni get involved. You don't see alumni involved in junior hockey. It is about the here and now, and it is about the communities and everything. So I can tell you this, I don't think I have a favorite rink in the CHL. I just know that the moments that I go into those rinks and I say to myself, this is the right place to be this night. And you're going to see a good game, and the fans are excited, and the players and the parents, and you leave there going, that was a great night. And that's how I feel about going into the junior rinks. And keep in mind, Dean, you know this as well as anybody. The communities that support junior hockey, mm-hmm. it's as much about going into the community and eating dinner like at one of your favorite haunts in Brandon, right? Or going to Kamloops and eating it at your favorite place, or going to Quebec City or Victoriaville. Whenever I go to Victoriaville, I get poutine, right? So it doesn't matter where I go. There's always that part of it too. Oh, you're here for the game tonight. Everybody knows in the community, and that makes it really exciting. And that to me is the thrill of the CHL and the different rinks you're in.
Yeah, you're right. The communities are the lifeblood. I grew up in Brandon with the Wheat Kings. They were the big thing. And, some of that gets lost in the bigger cities, but there is still strong support in those big cities. And I just wish all across Canada. We cared about junior hockey as much as Americans care about college football and college hockey. I mean, I went to a game at Ralph Engelstad, which is, probably the nicest rink in college hockey as far as of updates and things. It was just amazing to see the spirit. And, we have that spirit in the communities where there are teams. I just wish the rest of Canada could grab onto the CHL like college football. Like the CHL should be as big as college football. It's the kind of the same level in college hockey. And I wish more of that happened in Canada. As you know, I'm addicted to it, as they might say.
Yeah, well, that's good, and that's all good. But one of the things when I talk about it, it's because of the alumni involvement, right? And the way the U.S. colleges engage their alumni across multiple sports, right? And junior hockey doesn't have that same opportunity. It really is about kids 20 and under. Yeah, they look back and like you go London Knights. Well, Daryl Sittler played there, and Corey Perry and Patrick Kane. But it really is about the here and now. You don't see Patrick Kane coming back. There's not an alumni like per se, like, the University of Michigan alumni and the Boston University alumni and Harvard alumni. I mean, they're a big part of the atmosphere. You go to the Beanpot tournament in Boston, which is really the Boston City Championship with BU, Boston College, Northeastern, and Harvard. I mean, that's an unbelievable environment. One thing you didn't ask me about, the Minnesota State High School Hockey Tournament. It's one of it's bucket listing, and I know that when all those teams come down in Division I and Division II, there's 8 sections in Minnesota. So you have from the Division II, you got 8 teams coming down. Division I, you have 8 teams. But like having been at the state high school tournament, it's phenomenal. But I tell people, the sectional finals, so you go to Section 8 or Section 4, and you're watching what's been rivalry all year long, and the student body that gets involved, that's as good an environment as I've been in anywhere in the world.
I loved, when I played high school hockey in Brandon, my final really 2 years, I loved going to tournaments and games in the States. We would be like, why are there cheerleaders on the ice? Why are there so many people? This is crazy. Because we'd get like family and friends at our games, and those games were events. Those are the best tournaments to go to. As much as I think, Canada produces the best hockey players, I think the U.S. produces a pretty awesome hockey environment in some places as well.
Oh yeah, here, totally agree with you, right? And it emanates from the state basketball championships, state high school. I mean, I've watched 7-on-7 football in the state of Minnesota because in the smaller areas they can't field a team of 11, so they play 7-on-7. I remember watching Matt Niskanen play a high school football game heading into his draft year, just because we were in the area and we're on the way to somewhere and went in to watch him. I mean, it's phenomenal to think about that. And Paul Martin, who had a long career in the NHL, he was a wide receiver and a really good one. Keandre Miller, who's playing now for the New York Rangers. I mean, he was recruited. He had recruitment interest from NCAA football. Because he was such a gifted athlete and everything. So, you start to think about, the sporting system and how and it's different. It's different across different boards. But Dean, you've been in the CHL rinks, and you go to a big time competitive game between 2 communities in the Western Hockey League. You know that's a great place. And you know what? Harry's Ukrainian Kitchen.
Exactly. Harry's Ukrainian Kitchen. I will say Tuesday night at the Crush Cam between Regina and Moose Jaw is some of the best entertainment I've ever seen. Not just on the ice, Craig, off the ice as well, with the rivalry going back.
Oh, for sure. I remember one night going in, Les Jackson and I went into Prince Albert, and they had a really good team. They were always good. And the Seattle Thunderbirds were coming into town with Peter Nedved. And Peter Nedved was a really, really good player, obviously. So we're there before the game. We go and have dinner, there. We go in and meet with Terry Simpson. And Terry, who had tons of success, says, he goes, well, we're going to see what this Peter Nedved's made out of tonight. And Les and I are going, yeah, we will, because Prince Albert's a good test for him, right? So after the game, we're there. We go and see Terry after the game, and Peter Nedved had 3 goals and an assist and a 4-2 win. He said, well, I think we found out what Peter Nedved's made of, didn't we? Yeah, we did. But there was an excitement because, you know, here's Peter Nedved, this top-rated player coming across the prairie. He's going to go play in Prince Albert. I mean, it was a great atmosphere, and Peter Nedved was brilliant, and everybody recognized it.
Indeed. Craig, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for the time and the stories and the scouting tips. I know everybody's going to appreciate it and benefit from it, and we'll get back into the 2021 draft next week. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, we sure will. We'll have a blast with this, and we'll do that scouting idea about just trying to lay out some different types and everything. I look forward to it.
This is a serious message.
Craig Button joins us on the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Hotline. Become a scout and make money while providing prospects to the Ultimate Franchise Hockey League.
What you talking about, mister?
Pay that man his money.
I'm your huckleberry. Check out the details at www.uffsports.com.
It's serious. I like it a lot.
I said we got a winner.
UFFS. You own the game.
Oh, man, I went a little bit longer than I probably should have there with Craig, but it was just such a good conversation and so many questions we didn't get to. Thank you so much to those of you who submitted your questions. We will put them on the list. Some of those questions we asked today were from the last time we did it that we didn't get to originally. So we'll do that again with these ones. If your questions didn't get answered in this time around, we'll throw them onto the list for next show. But there was some fun. I love stories, and I can go along with what Craig did about the Todd Harvey story, because I've gone face down in a cow patty-filled corral, and it took a long time to get the smell out. So great stories from Craig and great insight as well. Thank you so much to those of you who submitted a question. Thank you to those for watching and listening today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe. If you're on YouTube here on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, just click that bell button and you'll get notified every time there's a new episode of anything here on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. And if you're listening, please subscribe and leave us a review. And thank you very much for doing just that. So that's going to wrap things up for another episode. We'll get back into the 2021 draft next week. If you'd like to be a part of the show as an advertiser, please send me an email, trackingthedraft@gmail.com. And if you ever have any questions for Craig, you can send those there as well. Keep it locked here on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. We have a lot of stuff coming out. UFHL Now this Friday. Every 2 weeks, UFFS podcast. Fantasy Hockey Time comes out on Monday morning and 2-Minute Tuesdays, plus a few other things that we're working on as well. If you'd like to be a part of UFSN, send me an email at ufsn@uffsports.com. Thanks very much to Craig. Thanks very much to you, the listener. Have yourself a great week in hockey.